Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this week's episode. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. Here's Alday.
What is going on with Datacrons? Welcome back, Highlanders. This is what is going on, where we take one topic and we break it down. What is it? And we break it down for our inner rim initiates, people that are new at the game, our mid-rim masters, people who have been playing the game in that 5 to 7 to 8 million world, and our outer rim legends who've been playing it since launch. One topic, 3 different levels of the game. We talk about how important it is and my tips for people at those different levels. Let's roll. So today we're going to talk about Datacrons, very much the Marmite of SWGOH. Some people love them, some people hate them. The fact is they're here to stay, so they're part of the game. So what are they? Well, they're sort of a short-term power boost. They're allowing CG to give a temporary boost, but not permanently affect the balance of the game. So if for one reason one faction gets a little bit boosted too much, it's only there for 4 months. That's how long they last. You've got 2 months of farming them, then they last for another 2 months, and then they go away. Now I'm going to talk a lot about GAC in this. They are obviously in DW as well, and they apply across that, but we'll talk a lot about GAC. We get better numbers there. What are they? Okay, so you've got 9 different levels. You have level 1, level 2, and then when you get to level 3, you get a modifier. Now, that's normally a light side or dark side modifier. That's really, really powerful. We're going to talk about that. And then you have levels 5 and 6, 4, 5, and then when you get to level 6, you tend to get a faction modifier. I say tend to, they have started to kind of blur the lines very much between light side, faction, and then character, but we'll talk a little bit about that maybe at the end. And then you have levels 7 and 8, and level 9 is a specific character that gets the boost. Now, when they were originally launched, you needed to be R5 across your entire team to be able to apply level 3 and higher, and level 7 to be able to do the character. They have recently reduced that, or reduced it maybe about 9 months ago, 6 months ago, down so that you can apply these level 3s across anyone at R3, but you have to have the entire team at R3. That's where there starts to become these a little bit for the higher game players, and the rarity. We're going to talk today about how prevalent these are in GAC in different levels of the game, Carbonite, Bronzium, Chromium. We're going to run through that a little bit so you can see how they break up and how common they are. They are short term. So after 4 months, they go away. In their term, they dust. So you've got to be really careful that you're not putting too much resources into them, you're not spending too much on them. You've got to be really, really careful that you're getting your bang for your buck. And that's what I'm going to tell you about today. I'm going to tell you each level of the game, how to get the maximum from Datacrons. But let's talk to my inner rim initiates first. People that are new at the game, people that maybe are just getting to Datacrons. Now, I reckon you probably get your first Datacron around maybe 2 million, or you maybe get your first usable Datacron around that spot. Maybe before then, Datacrons, you can maybe farm them. But you've got to remember, like I said, you need an entire team at least R1 to be able to use level 1 and 2, which are the modifiers, the sort of the stat boosts. But you need to be R3 to be able to use the level 3. So I would kind of say it's the level 3s that tend to give the huge boost. So it's probably level 3 you want to look for. So you're probably looking to take an entire team to R3 before these are relevant. And that's going to be around the 2 million mark. It depends. In this day and age of Datacron, of Lightspeed bundles, people are able to take entire factions up quicker. But if you're doing it without paying, or you're not getting Lightspeed bundles, you'll probably take a long time. You'll probably start seeing Darth Revan maybe be the first team there. You might have an Empire team head in that direction, maybe a Jedi team as well. But very often you'll have one character that's still at gear 12. Because it's not important really to the entire team. You're able to clear whatever you farm that team to unlock. You're able to do it with one gear 12 character. So this is probably an incentive. So I would have to say to my interim initiates, you probably ignore Datacrons. You know, you're going to, let's talk about some of the prevalence. So in Carbonite, the lowest tier of GAC, Datacrons are prevalent on about 3% of defensive teams, and level 9's about a tenth of that, so 0.3%. So you're not really going to see a Datacron too often in GAC. It's possible you might see one every couple of matches, but they're not going to be that impactful. They're going to maybe be level 3s, and if you use the right counter, all they're really maybe getting is a stat boost. So I think you should be okay. I think more important for you is to focus on the easy and normal conquest, focus on working on your characters, and definitely spending the ship money. We're going to talk about the shipment store. I think you need that for gear. I think you need to work towards the relics. I don't think until I got to maybe a 2 million, a 3 million, I think I might start picking up 1 or 2. And I would just use those. And the other thing I would say is that most people use Datacrons on offense. Whereas you see 3% used on defense in Carbonite, you use 8% on offense. So people like to use them in attacking. So when you start getting them, take them on attack, see what they do, start to learn about them, start to understand them, and start to certainly understand how they differentiate and how they are, how they roll up and when they're usable, etc. Okay, let's move into my mid-rim masters. Now, mid-rim masters, for you, when you start to get into that chromium, iridium, so chromium, bronzium, chromium, iridium spaces. So I would say that in bronzium, probably about 7% on defense, you'll see them. Chromium, 11% on defense. It's not until in rhodium you start to see them 26% on defensive teams. So not until you get to a rhodium are you going to actually start seeing Datacrons on 3 or 4 multiple teams on the people you're attacking. So by your point, you're probably looking to have that 4 or 5 Datacrons maybe, maybe in that space. But I certainly think for you, I would focus on the conquest character still. I think I would focus to get that character. Hopefully you're now moving on to doing the hard one. I think you look for those 6 events, trying to get the character after that. Don't necessarily rush it too much quicker. And always take a check on how many teams you need to actually use Datacrons. Now, you might not have full teams where they're all at R3 or more. You might only have 8 or 9 teams or 5 or 6 teams. Count that number, be aware of that number, and don't farm more Datacrons than you actually need. Don't get caught into that trap. You don't need them. You only need 5 or 6. You're better off building a steeper one where you have more at level 6. Only if you have them at R5 though. These are all things to look at. Well, no, sorry, R3 at level 6. Don't go for level 9 unless you actually have the character at that R5. I'd also say to my mid-rim masters, I would avoid the gambling mechanic. You know, I didn't say at the start, but each one of these level 3, 6 and 9s, you can re-roll them to get a different drop. Now, not everything in the game is equal. Not every level 3 is as good as every level 3. Every 6 is, you get good ones and bad ones. The good ones are rarer than the bad ones. Now, you've got to be very, very careful setting your heart on getting a specific level 6 or a specific level 9. You will have to re-roll it if it's a particularly good one. It is very, very unlikely you're going to hit that first time. So just be careful of the gamble. And I would say at your level, I would say I would hang on to the ones I had. I wouldn't gamble them away. I would just go for volume, and then I would start to use them differently. I'd get better at sort of mixing which ones need to go with which characters. Okay? Let's move on to my Outer Rim Legends. Well, if you're like me, you probably get about 23 to 24 level 9s, somewhere around that, each single set. And the key to maximizing your Datacrons is to dust them in the most effective, the most efficient manner. Now, it actually starts the conquest prior to the dusting. So every second conquest, you have to be ultra careful now. So the conquest prior to the dusting, you've got to max out your energy prior to ending. Now that means that what you do is you take your energy up above 200. You then use a battle probably to put it less than the 200, and then you buy one more refresh and you go to around the 310, 320. You can do finer if you want, but essentially try and get above 300 energy so that when you start the conquest where you're going to dust, you have a large amount of additional battles at the start to get good early distance. The other thing to do is try and have no Datacron data cache. Now, a lot of people will say you've got to buy it from the shipment store, and that's correct, but be sure to start that dusting conquest with as little as physically possible. You probably want to have about 2 million in your bank, and that allows you 58 million worth of ability to dust and then re-put those resources back in before you hit the cap. That's going to be important, so be really careful you don't go in suddenly with 30 or 40 million already there, because it's really going to limit your ability to get the maximum out of what you have. You're going to end up wasting all those shipments. So what to do is to save up your shipment money. Don't spend it going into that second cache. Probably if I was going to spend it, I'd probably pick up a couple of Mark III packs. You can buy those for about some shipment money, and maybe some Mark 1s. You cannot buy the Mark 2s. Now this is where they kind of get you with that artificial wall, and that's what we're doing here to try and get. So on day one, you've got your maximum energy of 320 before you've even started, and what you do is you start quickly through sector 1, as quickly through sector 2, and you try and get to that sector 3 node. Now sector 3 allows you then to farm the Mark II currencies for your Datacrons. You can, if you do a lot of refreshes, you can get to the sector 4 node, which ultimately is better. However, the sector 3 node is probably achievable without doing more than the 100 refreshes. You've also got to try and pick up some of the Datacrons from the end of sector 1 Datacron node, so you're able to then put your materials as you're dusting them. And then what you do is you sequentially dust, say 54 million's worth, and you put all that stuff as much as possible into the Datacrons that you've farmed from that sector 1 node. Under small circumstances you could purchase one, but it is definitely better to just farm them from that Datacron node at the extra sector 1. Other thing you could do is normally there'll be a calendar that will probably give you one. Make sure you hit that calendar early. Make sure you go and get it on the web store. That also makes a big difference. And that's what you do. You just make sure you've got about 36 hours before they get auto-dusted. So the more you dust yourself, the more you re-put those resources back in, the more you re-spend the money, means you will lose less money. That will get you the most effective way. The other thing that I do, or the advice I always say to people, is don't speed through Conquest. Now, you have, I would say, you have 1 week essentially of doing Conquest before you need to lock in for a GAC or for an event where you're going to need to use these Datacrons. So be careful not to focus on finishing Conquest and the feats and then do Datacrons last. It's always better to do 2 or 3 days worth of Datacron farming inside that first week. Certainly farm on the nodes, certainly do some of the feats if possible on those nodes, and certainly max out Sector 3 and Sector 4, but use the Datacron nodes. Don't really worry about Sector 5 until the second week of Conquest. You can certainly get the red crate or whatever crate you need after that point. What else? Well, okay, so Kyber. Let's talk about Kyber. So, how prevalent are Datacrons in Kyber? Well, you'll see them across the whole of Kyber. They're about 71% on defense. You can't ignore them. They are going to be there. And people use them about 78% on offense. In Kyber 1, that goes to 98%. So essentially, every single team in Kyber 1 will end up using one on offense and one on defense. So they are going to be there. So get used to them, understand what they do. The other bit of advice I would say is that don't gamble early. I know that sounds a bit strange, but farm all your Datacrons and only gamble prior to the lock-in. So wait until, if you're going to unlock maybe 5 or 6 or 7 at level 9, do all 7 at level 9 before you chase that one you want. it may well be that the 9th one that you farm for free, or you farm in your normal processes, actually hits the character you want. So you never needed to gamble that first Datacron. I see a lot of people gamble the first one they get, or the second one they get, trying to get that one they want. At the moment is Fulcrum, or many other ones, but you know, that named character they specifically want. So make sure you don't do any gambling at all until a day or two before the actual lock-in when you're going to use these things. Anyway, that's all we got. If you get any other advice, or anyone else has got any advice, put your advice down below in the comments below. Like, subscribe, do all the others. Come join us on Twitch. Welcome to Sandflies. Come watch GAC. Anyway, after yourself. Talk soon.